Thanks, Rick. Great to be here, and it's always been wonderful to see what fantastic information you have at this symposium every year. You've been doing a fantastic job organizing in San Diego, and now the whole world gets to listen in and be part of this. So it's really great to see. Um, I just wanted to mention today I'm here for Zero Waste USA. I'm in charge of education programs for Zero Waste USA, and what we're doing today is a really exciting new experiment, and I'll talk about that in a second. First, I want to just introduce next slide. Introduce the Zero Waste USA is the national affiliate of the Zero Waste International Alliance. Zero Waste International Alliance website is zwia.org. That's an important website for you to all remember because that's where the standards and principles that guide the whole zero waste movement throughout the world have been developed and are located. So whenever you have questions about what do real zero waste advocates call for, go to zwia.org and check that out. We're one of the national affiliates, and others that are involved are Zero Waste Brazil, Zero Waste Canada, Zero Waste Europe, Zero Waste Youth. There's a movement all over the world moving towards zero waste. Next slide. Today, what's exciting is we're integrating into the symposium a certificate program that's offered by Zero Waste USA for Introduction to Zero Waste. We've been offering this class for over 15 years. It actually started with CRRA back when CRA was doing the Recycling and Resource Management certification training program. And this Introduction to Zero Waste goes over all the fundamentals about what zero waste means, what the drivers are, what the benefits are, providing case studies for both communities and businesses on what zero waste is happening in different communities and businesses around the country. Today we'll be offering a certificate of completion for anyone who attends the symposium all day. All you have to do is take the quiz, which will be in the chat box and emailed out after the symposium. So if you want to get a certificate of completion for today's class, just pursue the quiz and then we'll get you in the queue for getting the certificate. This is actually also the first class of a three-part program for Zero Waste Associates training. The second class is on Zero Waste Principles and Tools. That's going to be on Zoom on March 9th. That's a 5-hour class featuring the International Zero Waste Global Principles, Steps for Becoming a Zero Waste Community, and Zero Waste Assessment Tools, tools to figure out how to get to zero waste in a particular community or business. That class and the third one is also includes a bunch of homework and weekly small group meetings, which will lead up to presentations in the third class for Zero Waste Associates on April 6th. That will also be by Zoom, where in a 5-hour class, participants will present group projects, draft zero waste plans for communities, businesses, or institutions, and the participants who complete a group project and pass the exam will be certified as Zero Waste Associates. So if you want any more information about that, please go to the link that's noted here, or just zerowasteusa.org and look for the training tab, and I'll give you all the more details that I just went over. So this is our first time that we're doing this integrated with the symposium. What we have done is we have a combination of lectures associated with the Intro to Zero Waste certificate program, plus your local examples of zero heroes. And those are providing case studies and situation reports from San Diego County and the region. And this combination is something we're pioneering today to try to see how how many people would like to do this. And for that, I'd like to have people note in the chat how many of these symposiums you've been to before, and secondly, how many of you want to get the quiz? I'd just like to get people using the chat function so you get used to doing that on Zoom and interact with everyone throughout the day through the chat box. Next slide, please. So now we're starting the class. We're talking about what is zero waste, and I always like to ask how many have heard the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle before? And in person, usually get a big laugh, and people all say, you know, everyone's hand goes up and says, yeah, they've heard it. And we're saying that's really zero waste. If we were really reducing, reusing, and recycle, we'd be at zero waste or darn close. So we're saying and that this is what zero waste means. So this is your elevator speech. When you tell people you've been at a zero waste event or you're working towards zero waste, just say it's all about reduce, reuse, recycle for real. With zero waste, we go on, in addition to recycling, we focus first on reducing and reusing, then recycling, composting, and redesigning the rest. When we first got into it at CRRA, zero waste was all about getting people to focus above recycling. We were doing well in the mid-90s on recycling, but people weren't getting that the most valuable thing to do is to eliminate wasteful practices, and that one of the best things that people can pursue are reuse programs. And in addition to using your coffee mugs and your reusable takeout containers, reuse has a myriad of benefits, with folks like Toyota saving $1 billion over 10 years using reusable shipping containers, and that's typical of reuse systems. So we'll go on to next slide. To there's actually a formal definition of zero waste, which all of you should recognize. This has changed a couple of years ago to be more streamlined. It's the zero waste is the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. So when you're writing reports or memos to council or giving detailed presentations, this is the definition that we encourage you to cite. This is the international definition that ZWIA helped curate and develop and refine through the past number of years. ZWIA was actually formed in 2002 to set the standards for what zero waste meant. And this is the definition of what it means. And there's other principles at zwia.org that help guide understanding how to apply this definition of zero waste. Next slide. So we are getting into some of the drivers behind zero waste. Why are we pursuing this? What is the benefit of zero waste, and is it realistic? And as far as whether it's realistic, we cite nature. There are no landfills or incinerators in nature. We don't burn or bury in nature our resources. Everything that's discarded is a resource for someone or something to use in the natural order. So we've got billions of years of experience in nature that has learned on how to use resources successfully to be sustainable. Next slide. We don't want to burn or bury our resources, and particularly don't want to burn them. Part of the refining of the definition for ZWIA was to highlight that anything over 212 degrees Fahrenheit, any thermal processes above those temperatures is considered burning or incineration in the ZWIA hierarchy. And those are the types of technologies that have too many negative impacts that we're encouraging people not to use those technologies. So we particularly are focusing people, we really don't want to burn up our resources. Next slide. And we don't want to discharge to land, water, or air. So by definition, zero waste means zero. We don't want anything going out. The measure of performance to be recognized as a zero waste leader varies by different programs. ZWIA has established a recognition program that says that if you're diverting 90% of your materials from landfills, incineration, and the environment, that you deserve to be recognized for being a leader in zero waste. And so our goal is zero. The performance measure for recognition is 90% diversion from landfills, incineration, and the environment. Next slide. The hierarchy of highest and best use was first developed by ZWIA around 2013. Interestingly, there were references to following the hierarchy of highest and best use in solid waste world for 20, 30 years. If you go back and research that term and Google it, you'll find there was all sorts of references to it, but no definition of it, and there was no details of what that really meant. So in 2013, ZWIA developed this hierarchy of highest and best use. And if you go to zwia.org /ZWH, you can find not only this graphic, but details, 4 pages of details of in what order to do things. And that's what the hierarchy is all about, is helping you focus on where should you put your time, your effort, your resources in working on things. And rethink and redesign at the top of the hierarchy is a really important part of that. That associated with reduce, the combination of them by redesigning to eliminate wasteful practices is where the most savings are obtained by zero waste businesses, zero waste communities. By eliminating those wasteful practices, that's where you get the biggest savings, and is why we can say that zero waste businesses have all saved money, and they save the most money through rethinking, redesign, and reducing their wasteful practices. The next important thing is to reuse, and reuse has not been given a lot of attention in the integrated waste management hierarchy, because it's only generally 2 to 6% of the total amount of materials in the discard stream that are reused or reusable. And so with the focus in integrated waste management on diversion of tons from landfills and incineration, there hasn't been as much emphasis on reuse because there weren't as many tons there. But there's a lot of benefits from reuse. You create a lot more jobs through reuse. You reinvest resources in the local economy. And the Edible Food Council of CRA is a testament to that under SB 1383, the need to reuse food and have food edible food go to people who need it, when 1 in 6 people in America don't know where the next meal is coming from, is a really important part of what zero waste is all about. It's reinvesting those resources. When we have 40% of all food in America being thrown away and 1 in 6 not knowing where their next meal is coming from, we've got to connect the dots on that. And that's what SB 1383 is getting people to realize statewide in California, and is a good example of the triple bottom line benefits of reuse for the environment, the economy, and for people. Then after you do all that focus, then you go into recycling and composting, material recovery, managing the residuals, and not pursue unacceptable practices like thermal systems over 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Next slide. Next slide. So now we're continuing on the drivers and benefits, and one of the things we highlight is that for Landfills, all landfills create gas with the decomposition of organic materials as the primary source of those gases. The majority of those gases are methane. Methane is a quick acting gas that causes greenhouse effect throughout the world, and it is much more pernicious, much more uh, impactful than carbon dioxide. In fact, it's in the long term of a 100-year horizon that a lot of climate change analyses are done. It's shown as 25 times the amount of impact as carbon dioxide. In the short term, of the next 10 years, it's 72 times more impactful than carbon dioxide because it acts to create that greenhouse effect so much more quickly. So anything we can do to keep from creating methane and releasing that into the atmosphere is critically important towards zero waste. Next slide. And on the methane, that means keeping organics out of the landfill, which is what SB 1383 in California is all about. The other thing we emphasize from a climate change perspective is recognizing that the wasteberg that was first, this graphic was first developed in San Francisco for their programs, is recognizing that for every ton buried locally in a landfill, there's been 71 tons of discarded materials created along the way from mining, manufacturing, distribution. Next slide. Of materials. So it's that 71 time multiplier that is why we can't recycle our way out of this situation. We've got to stop the mining, the manufacturing, and distribution practices as much as we can. We are looking to use our resources more efficiently. That's what zero waste is all about. It's all about efficiency. Next slide. When you look at climate change from a systems viewpoint, US EPA Josh Stolaroff years ago did this slide to look at all the sources of greenhouse gas emissions in America, and he found that by looking at this from a systems perspective, that the production and distribution of products and packaging cause 44% of all greenhouse gases in America. And if you couple that with the provision of food, the green slice of this pie of 12%, that's 56%. Over half of all the greenhouse gas emissions are associated with programs that need to be moving towards zero waste, and that zero waste can influence. This doesn't mean that zero waste will reduce climate change impacts by 56%, but it does mean that we can impact it tremendously, and typically cities will impact it on 10 to 20%. See you, Rick. Finishing up. Next slide. So we applied the WARM model in California years ago to see what would happen if we recycled and composted all the remaining materials in California, and it'd be the equivalent of taking all cars off the road. A huge impact that most people understand that transportation is a major contributor to climate change. Next slide. The other drivers for communities are to reduce climate change, create jobs, promote sustainability, assisting local businesses get many of the benefits of zero waste, promoting local food and nutrients back to the soil, and protecting the health of residents. Next slide. The drivers for businesses is, as I mentioned before, all zero waste businesses have saved money, reduces their liability, increases their efficiency, reduces greenhouse gases, gives them a marketing edge, provides energy and saves energy, and it's the right thing to do. Next slide. Finally, zero waste creates jobs. It's tremendously successful in one of the most potent ways of creating jobs at the local level. Next slide. And if you look at having 10,000 tons of discarded materials, if you just dump it in a landfill, it only creates one job. Next slide. If you have that same amount of material and compost the organics, you create 4 jobs. Next. And if you have that amount of material and recycle it, you create 10 jobs. And the real winner is, next slide, if you have 10,000 tons of discarded products and reuse them, you create 75 to 250 jobs. So that's, again, why zero waste is not just about waste diversion by the tons, it's also reinvesting those resources into the local economy to create reuse jobs and reuse businesses. So that's the basics of the drivers of how to get to zero waste. Some of those things will be on the quiz, so hope you took good notes, and don't forget to look in the chat box for the link to the quiz. Thank you.